So we're going to look now at duties of disclosure and whether David Teale was aware of them, but also interestingly who they applied to. So whether they applied to the Procurator Fiscal's office in terms of bringing the prosecution, and also interestingly the Post Office role, and whether they understood that they had a duty of disclosure on them as well to divulge all relevant material or all material to the Procurator Fiscal in order to make a determination on the case. But it's very interesting to know that there's some revelations regarding the evidence, in the fact that the decision to prosecute will be taken before a review of the evidence, merely based on the report provided by the Post Office investigator, almost a summary of what they believe they've found. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Can I turn to the fourth topic then, the duty of disclosure? What's your current understanding? Obviously we're talking now, but it would have applied to when you were a Procurator Fiscal, of the Procurator Fiscal's duty of disclosure or revelation?
That everything that the Procurator Fiscal receives must be transmitted, must be revealed to the defence.
So it seems in line with other people's understanding of their disclosure responsibilities, including investigators, where this is a generally understood concept by both, obviously, the Procurator Fiscal here and also the investigators.
Do you mean that everything that a Procurator Fiscal receives must be transmitted?
Pretty well everything. I'm being broad, but yes, broad terms.
What's the exclusion then that isn't within the pretty well everything?
I suppose if there was something which was deemed, that the police provided, which was deemed
sensitive.
Correct.
So public interest immunity material.
Correct.
Can you remember and appreciating it's 8 years or so back since you left the PF, can you remember the test, the approach to disclosure that was the law in Scotland?
No, I think things changed in 2010. I think the 2010 Act provided that there was effectively going to be far greater disclosure than there had hitherto been. It was closely regulated following that.
Well, if I suggested to you for the entirety of the period, we're looking at, say, 2000 until after the prosecution of William Corm, there was a duty to review all of the evidence and information that the Procurator Fiscal had received. Would that be right?
Oh, yes. Absolutely, I would.
And that you would have to disclose information, even if it would materially undermine or weaken the evidence led by the prosecution.
Of course.
And if it would materially strengthen the accused case.
Equally.
So he does seem very aware of that duty of disclosure and understands his responsibilities, even if it does undermine the case that is being brought by his office, which is a positive thing because, as he's previously mentioned, they didn't make determinations on cases in Scotland based on the likelihood of conviction, only if there was sufficient evidence to proceed.
And how did the Procurator Fiscal, in a case involving a specialist reporting agency, go about ensuring that legal duty was discharged?
Well, they have a duty when they report a case to ensure that they're disclosing to the fiscal everything that should be disclosed.
So you're dealing with the report stage at that point, is that right?
Well, no, I'm dealing with the case as a whole, and
okay.
Yes.
So we're going to come on in a moment to the process by which cases were reported from specialist reporting agencies and then prosecuted. And it seems that there are essentially two stages. One is the submission of a report, and then the documents come later.
That's right.
In stage two. Is that a fair, very high-level summary?
That's fair.
At the first stage, that's when the decision to prosecute is made.
Yes.
And so that's taken, we're going to come on to this in more detail in a moment, not on the basis of the Procurator Fiscal looking at the documents. He or she is looking at a report.
Correct.
So looking at the investigator's summary of the evidence.
Correct.
So that sounds like a potential weakness in the system, where there is the prospect that unless the report is comprehensive and accurate with regards to the actual evidence there, that it could potentially mislead the Procurator Fiscal into bringing a case that they might not otherwise do if and once they have reviewed all the evidence available to them.
At that stage, did the Specialist Reporting Agency owe a duty to reveal to the PF material of the kind that we're talking about,
yes.
i.e. material that undermined the proposed prosecution's case or may assist the proposed defendant?
Yes.
And so that was something that has to be in the report.
Yes.
And then when it came to providing documents to the Procurator Fiscal at the second stage, the later stage, again, was that duty of disclosure one that applied to the Specialist Reporting Agency at that stage too?
Of course.
And so it was a continuing duty throughout the life of the prosecution?
Correct. And even after your stage 2, throughout the life of the case?
Yes.
That duty?
So right up until trial. I'm not going to come at the moment to duties post-conviction.
Okay.
How, in the report stage, was that duty of disclosure as a matter of practice discharged?
It was the reporting agency was under a duty.
That's a restatement of the existence of the duty. So to give you an example,
yes.
in England and Wales, there are a series of forms that the police service have to fill out, and one of them is specifically in relation to this issue. Was there an equivalent in Scotland?
Prior to 2010, no, as far as I can remember.
I.e. a part of the report or a separate document given over to the identification of material that may undermine the proposed prosecution case or advance that of the proposed defendant?
No.
And so in the reports you got, there wasn't a box, a section, an area of the report that forced the Specialist Reporting Agency to address that?
No.
And I guess if they don't have to directly address that there, you can always subsequently claim that you weren't aware that that needed to be addressed. You weren't aware of that duty, although it would seem to be a pretty weak offence, because surely as a specialist reporting agency, you'd have to be fully aware of your duties, including the duty of disclosure, which David Teale has highlighted would apply to the post office in this case as well.
Thank you.